Let me submit that this is God save this government.
Enough in this government. It has to stop.
Several states reject the centre's GST proposals that require them to borrow directly through the RBI to bridge the shortfall in GST compensation. West Bengal's Finance Minister Amit Mitra says such actions will break India's federal structure. Kerala's Finance Minister Thomas Isaac says enough is enough, calls on states to come together to stand united against the government's arguments. Sources say the RBI may prefer the centre borrow to cover the GST compensation shortfall and that this be done in a manner that reduces fiscal burden. Adds the centre's borrowings may be cheaper by as much as 50 basis points compared to rates states could command. That's a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. SBI Chairman Rajneesh Kumar will not get an extension. The bank's board bureau recommends the bank's managing director Dinesh Khara for the post. Also recommends Chala Srinivasulu to the reserve list for the vacancy. India reports yet another record daily jump in coronavirus cases with over 77,000 new infections. India overtakes Brazil to account for the world's second highest tally of active cases with 7.4 lakh cases. The US still leads with over 25 lakh cases. A 64% drop in child immunization, a 50% drop in BCG vaccinations and a 39% drop in oral polio drops. Data released by the government's National Health Mission shows the COVID-19 pandemic has taken a severe toll on routine health services. The Indian Statistical Institute tells the Parliamentary Committee that the urban poor will need government assistance along the lines of the MNREGA to survive the prolonged recovery. Points out the daily wage workers and casual labour has been the worst hit by the lockdown as 63% of small businesses have shut down. Adds that 61% of small businesses have not been able to retain workers.
Of 21, we should start seeing also the economic recovery happening in the country.
There is a little bit of uncertainty there, but the fact of the matter is that it is substantially better than what it was before.
There's cautious optimism from the bigwigs in the FMCG space. HUL Sanjeev Mehta expects a recovery from 2021, adds that it is too early to say that rural demand is back. Nestle's Suresh Narayanan says any revival will hinge on the extent of income lost by the middle class.
China's basic judgment on China-India relations remains unchanged. China and India are partners rather than rivals to each other.
China and India should meet halfway to bring bilateral relationship on the right track, says Sun Vidong, the Chinese ambassador to India, tells CNBC TV 18 an economic decoupling is in no one's interest. Adds that the two neighbours should push forward with their consensus on de-escalation through dialogue. That's a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister Shinzo Abe confirms that he is resigning over health concerns, says he will continue as Prime Minister till the next leader is appointed. The news sends Japan's benchmark index, the Nikkei, over 1% lower. Good evening. Thanks for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The big CNBC TV 18 news break is confirmed. SBI Chief Rajneesh Kumar will not get an extension. The bank's board bureau has recommended Dinesh Khara's name for chairman. Ritu Singh joins us now with more details. Ritu, this is what our colleague Sapna Das was reporting. It is now confirmed. The bank's board bureau has officially put out a press release saying that Dinesh Khara has been recommended by the bank's board bureau for the vacancy of the SBI chairman. And there is, of course, a reserve candidate as well. But this closes the window of an extension for the current SBI chief, Rajneesh Kumar.
Well, absolutely, Shireen. You know, for public sector banks, the retirement age per se is 60 years. It hasn't been revised. Whereas for private banks, it is still 65. But that said, we've seen instances in the past where chairmen have stayed beyond 60 years, where they've been granted extension up to a maximum of 5 years in total. Rajneesh Kumar was appointed the chairman of State Bank of India in 2017 and completes his 3-year term in October, early October this year. And there were hopes that perhaps, he might be be granted an extension, but that has now been made very clear. He will retire come October, in just a couple of months from now. And the Bank Board Bureau, which interviewed candidates for the post of Chairman of State Bank of India today, have recommended Dinesh Kumar Khara to take over as the next Chairman of State Bank of India. Dinesh Khara is no stranger to anyone. He's been the Managing Director of State Bank of India since 2016. At the moment, he looks after the subsidiaries as well as the treasury business of State Bank of India. He's been in the credit department as well. He's grown, through the ranks of State Bank of India. He's, it's his first job. He started there and he's risen through the ranks to become a Managing Director. The second on the reserve list that Bank Board Bureau has now shortlisted is C.S. Shetty. Remember, he was recently appointed the Managing Director just earlier this year, and he's in charge of digital and retail banking. So these are the two candidates that the Bank Board Bureau has now put forward. Dinesh Khara, also close to 59 years of age, so if he does get an appointment of 3 years, he will also be serving as chairman beyond that 60-year age limit. But we have to see the final orders coming in from the government now, the official orders appointing him as a chairman based on the recommendation of the Bank Board Bureau.
All right, Ritu, many thanks for joining us. So Dinesh Khara could be the next SBI chief. The Bank's Board Bureau sending its recommendation, naming Khara for the vacancy of the largest Bank of India, that is State Bank of India's chairmanship. Well, here's the latest on the COVID count. India has reported yet another record daily jump in cases with over 77,000 new infections, taking the total count closer to 34 lakh. Over 60,000 people, though, have recovered, taking that count closer to 26 lakh. The death toll is at over 61,500. After more than 1,000 deaths were reported in the last 24 hours. India now has the second most active cases in the world. The US has 25 lakh active cases. India's count is over 7 lakh, and the count in Brazil is over 6 lakh. Russia and Peru have over 1 lakh active cases. So that is the COVID tally as it stands today. In other COVID-19 related news, at least 10 staff members of the Chennai Super Kings contingent are believed to have tested positive for COVID-19 in Dubai. Reportedly, an Indian player is also among those who contracted the virus. Either CSK or the BCCI have not issued an official confirmation on the matter. The IPL season starts on the 19th of September. Shops, offices and malls in Haryana will remain closed on Mondays and Tuesdays instead of the weekend. The order that doesn't apply to essential services comes barely a week after the Haryana government had reimposed a weekend lockdown. Airlines can now provide meals on board the aircraft. The government relaxes the rules but sets in place some strict guidelines to ensure minimal contact between crew and passengers. Says only pre-packaged food and hot beverages can be served on domestic flights. International flights can serve hot meals. The Supreme Court rules that universities cannot promote students without holding final year college exams, but allows them to approach the University Grants Commission to seek a deadline extension. According to UGC guidelines, universities have to hold exams by the 30th of September. The standoff between the centre and states over unpaid GST compensation dues continues. The centre says that COVID-19 is an act of God, I'm quoting the finance minister, and states should borrow in order to make up for the deficit. The compensation shortfall is estimated at 2.35 lakh crore rupees. The government has proposed two options, but both involve the states borrowing directly via the RBI. Several states have rejected the centre's proposal. West Bengal's finance minister Amit Mitra told CNBC TV 18 that the GST compensation cess is a moral commitment on the part of the central government, and such actions will break India's federal structure. Mitra said that at least 15 states were opposed to the idea of states borrowing and instead wanted the centre to do the needful. Kerala's finance minister Thomas Isaac said that all states must come together before the next GST council meet and put up a united front against the centre's proposal.
The question is, who will borrow? Who has the capacity to borrow? The states do not have the capacity to borrow. They are not even able to pay. Some of them are not able to pay salaries, and most dangerously, some of them are not able to pay pensions. The center has the capacity to borrow because it can monetize its fiscal deficit. That means the Reserve Bank can print money for them. Center has no problem in borrowing. Many states that supported this position that Government of India should pay included those who are, some of them with the BJP, Some of them have independent government. Some of them are with the opposition. Some of them are with Congress. Only 4 states were toying with the idea of states paying. Out of that, I think one of them doesn't matter. It's too small a state. The others started retracting during the discussion.
Kerala rejected both the propositions. The whole meeting, now it begins to suspect as a game. We spent about hours, each state making a presentation of what they thought should be done. And almost everyone, except for 2 states, said the central government is duty bound. The states which clearly express their position should come together before the GST Council meeting, take a common stand. I have never proposed this before because GST Council is a place where everybody exchanges freely their opinion, so on, give and take, and so on. But this seems to be completely manipulating the goings on. Therefore, I would like to, for example, talk with Amit Mitra, many other colleagues in the council, and take a common position. Enough is enough. It has to stop.
While state finance ministers of West Bengal and Kerala and many others, including the governments of Punjab, Delhi, and as we heard from those 2 finance ministers, at least 14 other states saying that they do not agree with this position of getting the states to borrow. They believe that the centre has better borrowing capacity and will be able to get a better rate as well. Meanwhile, we learn from sources that the Reserve Bank may prefer that the centre borrow to cover the GST compensation shortfall and that it may be done in a manner that reduces fiscal burden. Sources tell us that the centre's borrowing may be cheaper by as much as 50 basis points compared to the states, and that was the argument that you heard there from state FMs like Amit Mitra. Now, India's urban poor are in distress due to COVID-19 and they will need government assistance along the lines of an urban NREGS to survive the prolonged recovery. That is the assessment that the Indian Statistical Institute has shared with the Parliamentary Committee. In its report, which is based on a socio-economic survey, the Institute has pointed out that daily wage workers and casual labour has been the worst hit by the lockdown. Timsy Jaipura is standing by with the details. Timsy, what are the key takeaways and the key recommendations made by the Parliamentary Committee?
COVID-19 pandemic and its socio-economic impact has been bothering many, but now formally for the first time, India's premier statistic research institute, that is the Indian Statistical Institute or ISI, has flagged that the distress amongst urban poor is deep, and in a detailed presentation to the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Home Affairs, it has said that government assistance will be needed to overcome this impact. ISI's this particular suggestion is based on a survey that the institute did, and here are some of the findings. The ISI said that 85% of urban households experience some decline in income when it comes to the impact on agriculture sector. The findings share that 97% continued with cultivation but curtailed hiring, 25% did not hire at all, and 22% hired less than what was needed for cultivation. Secondly, the impact on salaried class. 65% of the private sector employees are not well protected is what the survey says. 35% of private sector employees did not receive any salary. 35% of private sector employees received reduced income is what the survey highlighted. Next, on the impact on the small business owners. 63% of small business owners closed their business. 61% small business owners who typically hired workers did not retain any workers is what the survey says. The survey goes on to even say that the small business owners who did not close, amongst those, 37% could pay only partial salaries and 39% could not pay any salaries. Thus, based on these findings, ISI suggested to the parliamentary panel that there is a need for the government to assist the urban poor on the lines of MNREGA. Full recovery will be a long-drawn one, cannot come in short run. Daily wage workers, casual workers and disadvantaged social groups are the worst affected due to lack of education and employment. So let's see how soon government takes cognizance of these suggestions and whether it considers coming up with a new policy for the employment of urban poor on the lines similar to the MNREGA. Back to you.
All right, Timsy, many thanks for joining us. So that's the view of the Indian Statistical Institute. Let's see if it finds currency of favour with the government. There is cautious optimism from the bigwigs in the FMCG space as the sector deals with the impact of COVID-19 and the lockdowns. HUL's Chairman Sanjeev Mehta expects a recovery from the start of 2021. In an exclusive conversation with me, he also said it's too early to draw a conclusion to say that rural demand is indeed back. On the other hand, Nestle's Suresh Narayanan believes that any revival will hinge on the extent of the income lost by the middle class. Take a look.
Let us wait for a few months to discern what is happening to the underlying demand without being impacted by supply chain disruptions or pantry loading or the loading and unloading of stocks in the distributors and in the retail trade. So there are many variables at play which do not give a firm picture. So the thing is, we play the game in a very agile fashion for the next few months, but keep a pulse on what are the trends which are shaping. Rework your innovation plans in sync with the trend. And I am optimistic that certainly by the start of 21, we should start seeing also the economic recovery happening in the country.
Rural demand clearly is outpacing urban demand as of now, and that's probably because the impact of COVID has been more pronounced in the metropolitan cities and the large cities as compared to the smaller towns and rural areas. The loss of the white collar, let's say, paid jobs is quite sharp in the last couple of months. And if that is a surrogate for the middle class, let us say, then obviously there has been a loss of income, reduction of income of some sort.
Well, India's top two FMCG leaders on the state of the recovery and the road ahead. Now, Indigo completes the engine replacement exercise for its A320neo aircraft that run on Pratt & Whitney engines, but sources say Go Air has 20 replacements to go, and the DGCA may extend Go Air's engine replacement deadline beyond the 31st of August. That's a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. Markets gave up early gains as auto stocks lost power, but Sensex and the Nifty still ended at fresh 6-month highs, having gained nearly 1% each. The Nifty Bank gains 4%, its biggest single-day gain in 3 months. The day's gains helped the indices rise 2.5% for the week. We'll head into a break, but when we return, China and India should meet halfway to bring the bilateral relationship on the right track, says Sun Weidong, the Chinese ambassador to India. That exclusive when we get back. The pandemic has caused massive disruption to routine health services. The government's National Health Mission has released data indicating that there has been a 64% drop in child immunization. The data also suggests that there is a 50% drop in BCG vaccinations and a 39% dip in oral polio drops. Archana is standing by with the details. Archana, severe collateral damage due to COVID-19.
Absolutely. National Health Mission data compiled mainly across public health facilities and some private healthcare facilities shows worrying scale of disruptions in routine health services in the April to June quarter when OPDs were shut, health staff was entirely moved to fight COVID-19 and lockdown disrupted access. The disruption is most pronounced in the month of April, with some services recovering in May and June, but largely is still subdued. The worst hit has been the child immunization program, and which could have potential lifelong impact on children. Number of immunization sessions you see has sharply dipped by over 64% in April versus January. Some schedules of these have picked up pace in May and June, but even still not back to the original levels. If we look at the BCG vaccination, 1 million children did not receive their BCG vaccination, which can provide them some protection against tuberculosis, half versus the January numbers there. Another 6 lakh have missed their first dose of oral polio vaccine. That has seen a sharp dip again in April, a 39% drop versus January. And this continues. In fact, oral polio continues to suffer even in June. Nearly 1.4 million missed their pentavalent shot that could protect them from 5 deadly diseases, a 68%, a sharp dip here in April, and even now it hasn't picked up. 69% children missed their rotavirus vaccination and 72% missed their measles, mumps, rubella vaccination. This is as far as immunization is concerned. Fewer women accessed maternal health care in late March and April 2020, where the lockdown was the strictest. Institutional deliveries fell by more than a third in April. Now, India is also home to largest number of anemic women, but both hemoglobin and routine checkups during pregnancy fell sharply by more than 50%, and even now has not recovered much, although slightly recovered in June, but not much. Medical treatments, whether inpatient, outpatient or emergencies, fell for all diseases, both infectious and non-communicable. 6.8 crore fewer people accessed allopathic OPDs in the month of April, and it has still not picked up in June. More than half of the critical ailment OPDs like oncology, acute heart diseases have dropped 76% in April, and overall for quarter down nearly 70%. This is the outpatient. If we talk of the inpatient services, they had already started getting affected from March itself. And in April 2020, they were down 62% versus the month of June, which is considered largely unaffected. For critical ailments like COPD, respiratory, tuberculosis, the inpatient services were down more than 60%. Surgeries have halved between April and January 2020. If you look at this figure, biggest drop has been seen in the elective surgeries, which are down 82%. Even emergency services, now that's something that should not have been hit, but even there, lack of access to healthcare facilities have meant that if we look at the emergency services, they have been down about 50%, both for the cardiac as well as other emergencies. Disease diagnostics were hit. Overall lab tests fell 63% in April versus January, and the impact was particularly seen much larger in the HIV tests, which were down 65% in the April-June quarter versus the January-March quarter. Hospitals are already seeing a big pent-up demand for surgeries and OPDs as they slowly resume regular services. However, experts warn over focus on COVID-19 and ignoring routine health services could have long-term impacts, and the gains India has made in the disease control programs will be lost, while increasing morbidities and increasing healthcare complications. Back to you.
Well, Archana, that is telling data. We've been hearing people from the medical fraternity, CEOs of hospitals telling us that, but that was anecdotal. It was hospital-wise. This is the National Health Mission's data that Archana has put together for you, and it tells you the story of the collateral damage that we have seen. Now, another exclusive. The India-China border standoff has been on for close to 4 months now. Disengagement remains stalled at Pangong Tso and Gogra at the LAC. Speaking exclusively to CNBC TV 18's Parikshit Luthra, China's ambassador to India, Sun Weidong, has said that both India and China are communicating through bilateral channels every week, and it is unreasonable to link the boundary dispute with economic relations. On Huawei, he said that the company was ready to offer a special agreement to India. Here's an excerpt of that exclusive conversation.
Well, China's basic judgment on China-India relations remains unchanged. China and India are partners rather than rivals to each other. I don't think there is a reset in China-India relations. Our relationship should move forward rather than backward or reverse. And China and India should avoid mutual attrition nor be opposed to each other, and instead we should meet halfway to bring our bilateral relationship back on the right track. The current difficulties we are facing in our bilateral relations have even highlighted the importance of transmitting and implementing the leaders' consensus.
On the issue of 5G trials, it seems that India has taken a decision on holding 5G trials without Chinese companies. What would be your reaction to that?
Well, what I learned is that last year, the Department of Telecommunications, the DOT of India, invited enterprises from various countries, including Huawei, to participate in the 5G trials. So I wonder if you have an official confirmation of what you said. But as a private enterprise, Huawei has achieved a leading position in 5G technology. But however, a certain country resorts to suppress a Chinese private company. Let me say that Huawei has been operating in India for 20 years. It has created a large number of local jobs, promoted sufficient competition in India's telecommunications market, and provided high quality and low cost products and services to Indian telecom operators and consumers. So Huawei has never had any security issue in its operations in India. Furthermore, Huawei is ready to enter into a no backdoor agreement with India. I think the two major economies of China and India should attract each other like magnets rather than forcefully be separated or even decoupled from each other.
Well, that's China's ambassador to India in a conversation with my colleague Parikshit Luthra. You can catch that on our special series Global Eye. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. From all of us here, many thanks for watching. Enjoy the weekend.